Hello, JJ Meets World listeners. This is your host with the most and your chef for the day. I'm going to start off by telling you about a movie called The Menu, and then it's going to go into some delicious memories that Tucker and I have. Sit back, relax, and grab a napkin for this episode of JJ Meets World. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
So this, I'm going to start off this podcast with a spoiler alert for a movie that I saw. So if you intend on seeing the movie The Menu anytime soon, you want to turn this off. Now, if you said, I don't even know what that movie is, don't worry, keep listening. I'm going to save you $16 and 2 hours of your life. So it was recently Black Friday, and I don't do Black Friday shopping. Like anything that I need to purchase for Christmas, I've pretty much got it at this point. I used to love to go out when Black Friday actually meant Black Friday, right? Like these deals are only today. Stores open at 5 o'clock in the morning. There is something about that I enjoy because I think we never evolved from hunter-gatherers, and this is just our new form of hunting.
Okay.
And that's why people love Black Friday so much. So instead of going out, I decide I'm going to go see a major motion picture in the theater. Thanksgiving 2022 was one of the worst Thanksgiving movie releases of all time. It's garbage that's out there right now. There's nothing worthwhile in theaters, and certainly nothing that opened over Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving used to be the holy grail of opening a movie because it set the tone for the Christmas season. For example, there's a movie coming out soon called Violent Night, where Santa Claus, played by David Harbour, interrupts a home invasion and becomes kind of like the diehard Bruce Willis to this family and like saves them. Why didn't that open over Thanksgiving? That's a great Christmas movie to go see, right? It's just tongue-in-cheek enough that you could get the whole family. But the movie I went to go see is a film called The Menu, okay? And so The Menu has had very sparse but very targeted advertising once it was announced. So the movie itself really pushes the fact that Ralph Fiennes is the chef in this situation, okay? So it has him in a chef's coat, and then also on the cover of the poster is a bunch of nameless people in the background. Excuse me. And then Anya Taylor-Joy, who's big from like the Queen's Gambit and that X-Men movie that nobody saw. And then Nicholas Hoult, who also played Beast in those early X-Men movies. And I got to tell you right off the bat, I've never liked Nicholas Hoult. I don't like him in anything, but I did kind of enjoy him in this because he plays such a douchebag. Okay. The movie had its premiere.
You didn't like him in Mad Max?
No.
He was great in Mad Max.
That could have been literally anybody. Here's the thing.
But it was him,
there's
he was
nothing
great.
about the role is amazing.
He dated Jennifer Lawrence, JJ, did you?
Well, excuse me, what was that?
He dated Jennifer Lawrence, did you?
No. And you know what?
That's right.
It's because I'm Team Anna Faris. I can't believe Jennifer Lawrence broke up that marriage. She should be ashamed of herself. So, here's the premise of the movie, just in a general idea. There is a very exclusive restaurant that is on an island off the coast, off the East Coast. So you have to take a ferry to get out there. It only seats 20 people a day, and meals are $1,300 a person. And it's this famous chef who has like grown through all these other restaurants, and it's this huge deal. and they grow almost everything that they, all their herbs and produce. They smoke all their meats right on site. It's very hoity-toity. So it's about the experience, and then the food is kind of the artwork, so to speak, right?
Right.
So the movie itself was produced by Adam McKay and Will Ferrell. So you think, oh, so this is going to be funny, right? This is going to be great. It's directed by a guy named Mark Mylod or Millode. Mylod. So he was one of the guys who produced Entourage and directed a bunch of episodes. He directed For the Ali G House, The Big White, What's Your Number, Cold Feet, The Royal Family. So he does a lot of comedy, and then he does some dramedy as well. And so the menu was a big chance for him to do excuse me, a movie that had like a big budget, right? Like, and even though it's an independent, it still has a big budget compared to like The Big Night and What's Your Number. So, which by the way stars Anna Faris, Team Ferris. So the menu comes out, and I'm watching this movie, and it opens with Nicholas Hoult explaining to Anya Taylor-Joy why this is such a big deal. He tells her how much he paid for the night, and she's like, oh my God, clearly she is not a foodie, right? And
Right.
In fact, she lights up a cigarette, and he gets mad because she's dulling her palate. They go out to this island, and when they arrive on the island, they are greeted by the staff of this restaurant. And the staff says, hello, hello, blah, 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 hello, blah, blah. And they know a lot about these people already, clearly, because they only have 20 guests that evening. And one of them is a world famous food critic. In fact, she's the woman who kind of helped him get his start by reviewing his food and giving him like all this praise. There's a washed up movie star, and that role is played by John Leguizamo, and it's almost like he's playing himself, which is really good. I like that, and his assistant. There's an older couple who's celebrating an anniversary. There's 3 Wall Street bros who are there. So just a smattering of people inside this restaurant, and they're taking on a full tour of the grounds. And when Anya Taylor-Joy gets up there, they're like, hello, Mrs. Westerville. And she's like, oh, no, actually, like, I'm Margot. And Nicholas Hoult says, yeah, there's been a change of plans. Miss Westerville couldn't be here, so this is my date instead. And then you kind of get the idea that they haven't been together forever, and he keeps calling her the coolest girl there and how excited he is to be there with the coolest girl. And so you're like, oh, she's a hooker. I get it. And so she came out to be on this at this place. So they go in and they get their appetizer, this amuse-bouche, and right away you can tell that like everyone is taking the food too seriously, right? Like they're taking it too seriously. And every time, Ray Fiennes talks to the group, he opens with a clap that just sends like a shiver down your spine. And he explains what it is. And then he goes, isn't that right, staff? And they all in unison, yes, chef. And you're like, oh, this is messed up. So the second dish that he brings out is the bread course. But what he says is bread is for peasants. The reason human beings eat bread is because it's flour and water. There's nothing to it. And you are clearly not peasants. You're paying $1,300 a meal. So what I've done is I've taken all the things that would make bread delicious, and I'm presenting them to you on a plate on their own. So, for example, let's say that there was going to be like olive oil like drizzled over the bread, that there's just like a little pool of olive oil on this plate. And there's a little pool of these other little savory things. And at this point, Anya Taylor-Joy is like, can we just like, this is stupid. This is ridiculous. And the Wall Street bros are like, can we just get some bread? We just want some bread. Okay, just give me some bread. And going into this movie, I knew that there was something wrong with right. So the movie isn't just about like, oh, look at this. I know it was going to be a tension based thing and whatever. And it turns out that
makes it sound like people are getting killed in the trailer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so what the movie ends up becoming is this chef has decided that he's going to not only kill all of the guests that night for different types of crimes that they've committed to human beings, but the entire staff is going to kill themselves as well at the end of the night. And he lets it be known at one point. So he's got this little mini army of like knife wielding chefs. So if anyone tries to escape, they cut off the ring finger. He mentions like he was given all this money by this like ultra billionaire to start this restaurant, but then the billionaire would come to eat and he'd ask for substitutions. So he hangs the billionaire over the ocean on a crane with these angel wings because he was the angel investor, and then slowly just dumps him into the ocean to drown. And you start finding out the reasons why all of these people are there. And it's very much like a Strangers on a Train. It's supposed to be like, and then there were none, or an Agatha Christie type thing for this is the reason why all of these people deserve to die in one way or the other. And the one that I think you're going to get the biggest kick out of, Tucker, is that when he gets to John Leguizamo, John Leguizamo was in a movie. He took like just a paycheck to make a movie called Paging Dr. Sunshine, in which it's like a screwball comedy in which he plays a wacky surgeon. And his justification is, I get 1 day off a month, and I went to the cinema and I saw that movie and it was horrible. And he's like, well, so, and he's like, the 1 day I had free time, you wasted it. And now I'm going to kill you for that. He's going to kill the tech bro or the Wall Street bros because all of them have been embezzling money, and he serves them tortillas with their bank statements on it to show them like how shitty that they are. The couple having an anniversary, the guy recognizes the Anya Taylor-Joy as a prostitute, and so there's some awkwardness there. But the reason he kills them is, can you tell me, my loyal customers, you've eaten here like 7 or 8 times in the last 5 years. Can you tell me one dish you had the last time you were here? And they can't come up with like one of the dishes. He's like, I explain it to you. I give you a menu when you go home. Like I've taken all this time. And it's because they don't appreciate his art. And speaking of art, the reason Nicholas Hoult is there is Nicholas Hoult is so obsessed, is such a foodie, that he knows all the tricks and the things that they do. So like he makes a big deal about like a thing called like the Blofeld jet, which makes fake snow, and they're using the fake snow on some of the dishes. And he said, like, you Instagram everything you eat, you suck the art out of making food. And so you start to like find out the reason why he's going to kill these people. And I'm like, what is going on with this movie? It's all over the place. It feels weird. All of the staff is in with this. There's a meal that one of the sous chefs makes called the mess. And he explains that his sous chef, like Randy, is good, but he'll never be great. And he wrote him a letter and how he wanted to work with him. And he's worked now there for 5 years. And he is a good chef and he makes delicious food, but he'll never be great. And because he'll never be great, he allowed him to design a dish here that might be great. And the guy puts a revolver in his mouth and shoots himself in front of everybody. And his dish is called the mess. And then they bring out this like thing with all of these like Turkish delight, like beef cubes. And so like the experience of like watching someone die is now supposed to like change your palate when you eat these things. And like, that was the greatest thing he's ever done. So I don't, trust me, I'm getting to a point here, people. So I get to the very end of this movie, and while I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with it. I mean, it's an updated version in this weird food obsessed culture we have. It's an updated version of one of these old stories like Strangers on a Train. So I think that that's kind of neat, in that respect that they're doing this. But and it's like 7 courses, and the last course is dessert. And everyone starts throwing this dust on the floor everywhere, and everyone gets like tied into their chairs, and no one's fighting to try and escape, right? Like, if you knew you were going to die, wouldn't you try to escape? So I guess they accepted their fate and somehow. And so
Didn't you say that they're like in the middle of water though?
Right, they're on an island off the coast.
Right.
But still, right? Like, wouldn't you try and swim it? Like, people,
Sure.
there's someone escaped from Alcatraz at one point.
I mean, at a minimum, I would try to at least arm myself with, silverware utensils.
Right. So they're spreading this weird, like, brown dust everywhere. And he's explaining about how desserts are such an important part of the meal. And yet the most popular dessert is the most common gauche dessert you could ever imagine, the s'more. And everyone is outfitted with this, like, cloak of marshmallows that have been tied together and a hat made out of chocolate. And so I'm like, oh, he's going to start this place on fire and they're all going to, like, roll in the, like, graham cracker dust is what it is on the ground. So he starts the place and himself on fire. All of the chefs, and there's like 20 other chefs, turn on the gas to all of the, like, equipment and just stand there and wait for the moment when the place is going to blow up. And watching everyone, like, in these marshmallow costumes with this chocolate running down their face. Oh, by the way, Judith Light is the wife of the couple having an anniversary. And I'm like, she didn't do anything to anybody. She's innocent. So, a big spoiler, Anya Taylor-Joy gets to leave because she asks him to make her just a cheeseburger and not like some weird thing, just an old-fashioned, like, cheeseburger, and then gets it to go. And he realizes that, she never did anything, and the only reason that she is there is because this guy, he explained to this guy when he made his reservation that he was going to die at the end of the meal. So the Nicholas Hoult character. So Nicholas Hoult knowingly brought this woman with him, knowing that she was going to die. So,
well, did he just think that he was being colorful with his language?
No, because you can see, like, in the middle of this, like, he doesn't like in the time when he's allowed to, like, try to escape, he doesn't, and he keeps eating the food even after, like, someone's had their finger chopped off and stuff like that, and so he's nuts. Like, this guy's crazy.
How do they explain? And I'm sorry if you said it and I didn't catch it, but how do they explain the hold Ray Fiennes has over the staff?
So he is such a good chef that they follow him blindly. It's almost like he's a general at this point, right?
But it's like a cult, basically. Yes. They'll die for him, kind of a thing.
Yes. So, like, they at one point they get to walk through the barracks that they have here, and it's just a cot with a small bedside table with a toothbrush and a lamp on it. And this woman giving the tour explains that they only sleep for 5 hours a night, and then they're working the entire other time. And it's constant devotion, and you always say yes, and you learn all these things, and da-da-da-da. I mean, they make it to be such a big deal that they're all here that, of course, they've been brainwashed to some extent. And they also fully buy into the fact that, like, these people have to die so that their art can live. So
does Ray Fiennes die?
Yeah, he sets himself on fire. He's like, he says he's been a chef so long that, like, he's essentially, like, burnt the nerves out of his hand. So he reaches in and grabs hot coals out of an oven and holds them in his hand and explains, like, this whole thing about the s'mores, and then drops them on the floor that's been soaked, like, in grain alcohol. And like a giant flame goes around him while it's melting the marshmallows around everybody else. It is 106 minutes long, and it is just bad. I can't say anything about this. I was like, oh, this is so good. So if any of my description about this movie made you go, hey, I think I want to see it, don't, because I told you. You know it. Congratulations. Spoiler alert, it's done.
Is it okay? What's the primary problem? Is it the pacing?
It's the pacing. It's the unbelievable, the fact that, like, I know that they're going to kill themselves too, but, like, I find it so hard to believe that all of these people could be talked into this moral ambiguity of thinking that they are killing people for a just reason. The fact that people sit there and eat these, like, still continue to enjoy courses of this meal while they are, while they know they're going to die. It seems wholly unbelievable that people would just stop, that you would stop and not try anything to ensure that you would live longer. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I know that it's a movie and I've got to kind of suspend some disbelief, but that's one of my big problems with a lot of movies, is that they assume that the human condition is that, yes, I know what I've done and I will atone for my sins. Be like, no, the human condition is survival, and people will do whatever they can to survive. It's for the exact reason why. Have you ever read any of that stuff from like Edgar Allan Poe's era, where they like unearthed a mausoleum and they were like scratches on the inside of the
Sure.
coffins? So someone tried to scratch and claw their way out of a coffin after they were accidentally buried alive. It's why when Apollo 13, when everything went to hell in a handbasket, the world watched to see what was going to happen to these astronauts as they fought for survival. They were pulling panels off the wall. They were doing everything they could to make it back. It's why when Jurassic Park happens, we don't just turn over and die. Even the lawyer tried to run away and seek solace on a toilet. It didn't work out for him, but they all want to survive. We just want to survive in some shape. And I think that doesn't lead to a very emotional climax for a story, right? The idea that these people accepted what they've done and they need to, know that they need to be punished. I I just can't buy that. Also, I really wanted to eat some of the stuff that was in this. Some of the
What
things
was
looked
the best
real
dish?
good.
So it still had at least that. It had food porn.
Yeah, that's what this movie was. It was food porn. And so like the sea scallop that they eat in this, they see the guy harvesting the scallops right from the ocean right before that they're about to eat them, and it's served on top of a rock that they got from the beach that they used to slow cook the scallop, and it's covered in microgreens. And I'm like, that looks delicious. I would like to try that, but I also don't want to have to fight for my survival. And it made me think about this. Tucker, can you isolate 2 or 3 of the best meals that you've ever eaten in your life? Can you remember times when you're like, this food is so good? And I'm not talking about the fanciest. I'm not talking about the most expensive. I'm talking about some of the best food that you've ever eaten in your life that left some kind of an impression on you for some food. I'll let you think about that while I talk about one of mine.
Oh, I already
Oh,
know
do
mine.
you? Oh, please don't let me stop you.
Well, my absolute best meal I've ever had, I've talked about it on the podcast before. It was in Vegas at Planet Hollywood, in a steakhouse that was inside of Planet Hollywood. And that steakhouse was just called Steakhouse, but it was very like fancy schmancy, expensive menu, top of the line steak. And luckily the place I was working for was paying for it. So I wasn't having to foot the bill. And so I ordered, I'm sure it was like a 10 ounce or something, but it was a filet in a peppercorn crust that came with a side of mashed potatoes fried in duck fat.
Mm-mm.
And it was the most delicious thing I've ever had. And I ate slowly, which is not a thing I do. I usually eat really, really fast. I wolf stuff down. And that's just a terrible habit that I've had that I need to break myself of. But this was so delicious that I ate it like bite for bite, one at a time. Nothing has ever matched the pizza experience for me of eating at Giovanni's in North Fargo.
Oh, okay.
I can as a kid, just the not just the food but the setting. The closest food in town that tastes anything like it is Casey's, but Giovanni's was another level entirely. And I have so many good memories of eating at Giovanni's that I can still smell it in my nostrils. And then my final example that I'm going to give for right now, because there are always so many other foods, but actually from this Thanksgiving weekend, I was in Arkansas to visit my sister and my dad, and then we went to Kentucky to visit my uncle and aunt and cousins for Thanksgiving. and my Aunt Jane made this sharp cheddar pimento dip that I'm still thinking about. That
Really?
I can't stop thinking about it. And I like when I tried it, I just sort of stood next to it and ate that for like 2 hours. I couldn't stop myself. It was so good. And I asked her for the recipe and she said, "Well, I can give you what the ingredients are, but I don't really have measurements. I just kind of like played with visually looked enough to me to kind of get it to a consistency or whatever." I can't stop thinking about it. I'm still thinking about that cheese dip. So those are the 3 examples that came to the top of my head right away. I already have some more coming into the back of my head, but I've already given 3 examples. So I think I want to hear some of yours.
So I want to talk about that recipe real quick from your Aunt Jane. First of all, I have been the beneficiary of a meal at Tim and Jane's house, and
Mhm.
my goodness, that woman can cook.
Oh,
Wow.
yes, and the entire spread during this Thanksgiving was unbelievable. I ate so much food and it was so good.
My
Oh, man. I think Thanksgiving has to be my favorite holiday now. I think it was Halloween, but I haven't really fully celebrated Halloween for a number of years, but I never miss celebrating Thanksgiving, and, I think Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday
I
now.
think one of the things I like about Thanksgiving, it's got everything I like about Christmas, but there's no pressure to get gifts. And
Yeah.
I enjoy that to some extent. So my mom has a recipe called onion goop, and it's made for after you make like a pit ham. It's for the ham sandwiches that you eat afterwards. And essentially it is mustard, mayonnaise, and sliced onions, and it's a topping you put on the sandwich. That is the most disgusting thing that I've ever seen in my life. So, mustard and mayonnaise, hate them both. Hate them so much that the thought of them combining together to ruin a ham sandwich infuriates me. And for a lot of years, I said this recipe is going to die with me because there's no way I'm ever going to make it. I never wanted to live on, but I ended up putting it in a cookbook that my work did, that was available to the public. And my mom's recipe is like this. It's you start with like 2 cups of mayonnaise, 2 cups of mustard, but you're going to add more mustard until it becomes the color of Pac-Man.
Okay.
And that's how you make it until it becomes the color of Pac-Man. And so if you add too much mustard, you can just add a little more mayonnaise until it gets to be the color of Pac-Man, and then add onions to taste. So there's not a lot to it, but like everyone I know who's tried it, they like when they see it, they start drooling because they're like, "Oh, it's so good
I
and tasty, and I love
I
it so
need to
much."
I need to try this really bad. I
Ugh.
need to try this really bad.
Yeah, well, I think Phil Lund, previous guest Phil Lund, might make it from time to time, and I think he's the only person I know who does that. So,
You
oh,
know what I really want to
go.
try
Yep.
is I brought back with me a couple of packets of Gold Star chili powder,
Yeah.
and I wonder what it would be like to take that and mix it in with sour cream just for a dip.
But it'd be
Um,
fantastic.
I bet it would be really, really good, and then maybe just put some, like, cold shredded cheddar and lettuce on top of it and just, like, a little bit of onions, and so it's like a taco dip, but
Mm.
it's a Cincinnati chili dip. I bet that would be fan-fucking-tastic.
That sounds absolutely wonderful.
I might do that today.
So let me tell you about a couple of the meals that have changed my life. Smitty's Market in Lockhart, Texas. When I went down to Texas to do some improv shows for the Wounded Warrior Project, I knew I wanted some good old Texas barbecue because, as I've mentioned before in this podcast, barbecue changes depending on the region you're from. So, like a
Yeah.
Carolina barbecue is very mustard heavy usually. Barbecues up here in our region are usually like maple syrup based. That's the like sugar agent that they put into their barbecue sauces. So it's a lot sweeter. Honey barbecue even becomes pretty big. Texas, the barbecue is all about smoke and it's about simplicity. So, Smitty's Market was an old like grocery store way back in the day that the Cruez family owned, and this guy named Smitty buys it from them like in 48, and they had a little tiny like smoker in the back, and he expands the smoker and then adds a seating room, And here's what I like about it. You walk in and it's just rows of tables. So it's not like, oh, this is my table of 4. It's just rows of tables. You walk back to the smokehouse, and the smokehouse, there's no frills to it. It's a light hanging over a small counter that's almost black because there's so much soot, and a brick wall behind it. And in the brick wall, there's slots where you can put in the ring sausage, the brisket, things like that. And then it's stoked with wood that they bring in from outside. So it looks like you just walked into somebody's shed, but
Okay.
there's nothing in there. And so there's one person behind there, and you tell them what you want, and they're like, okay. And so they give you like a number. Essentially, they're like 5. And so then you go up to the front, you tell them what you ordered, and then you can order some sides, but the sides aren't. It's like you can get a side of coleslaw that comes in cups that they've already packed and put together, and then they include some saltine crackers and plain white bread. And so you could also get a pickle if you wanted, or a
Whoa.
glass of lemonade, but there's nothing extra to that. And at first I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. No, the simplicity of it is one of the things that made this meal so good. So I had ordered some brisket and some hot links, which are their like like rolled sausage. And so they bring it out. They don't even serve it to you on a plate. They pull some red butcher's paper out, and then that's your plate that's in front of you. And it's hot, and it's greasy, and it's salty, and it's a flavor compound you can't explain. No wonder they just give you plain white bread with it. So essentially you use that to like sop up the juices that have come off of these
Mhm.
meats. It's perfect, Tucker. Like, it was a perfect meal. It was so good. It was so good that I ate to my heart's content. When I was there were 3 other people in the restaurant. The person working the pit counter, the person working the actual like sides counter, and then someone else who's in line. And so when I went up to the pit counter, I gave my order and I said, yeah, I can't wait to try this. It's the first time I've ever had Texas barbecue. And the person said, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Fargo, North Dakota. And the guy goes, oh, I'm from Breckenridge. And I'm like, really? For real? And the other customer who is there is this like trucker behind me. And he's like, I'm from Crookston. And I was like,
Oh my
you gotta
god.
be damn kidding me. We are all within like 40 miles of each other, and we all end up here at the same time. And they explained to me that people make pilgrimages to Smitty's Market. And
Okay.
it's that well known in Texas as a place that just does barbecue well, right? You're not going to find something that's like, ooh, look at this new age, blah, blah, blah. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but they're like, we know what we do it well, and we don't focus on 50 things, we focus on 5 things. And I think
Mhm.
that not only was the meal good, but the experience of going to some place of, not having a million other things, does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Oh,
Made it
it just that
worthwhile.
it yeah, but and what that means then is it makes them able to specialize in doing that thing
Right.
versus them having to divide their attention on all these different other things they have to keep. And so, like, if they have a massive menu with a ton of options, that means that they have to be keeping more things frozen, right?
Yep.
Which means that they're just not going to be as fresh in general. So I really, really like the idea of restaurants. They're like, we're going to do like these 4 things really, really well
Right. I
and
like
not
that
worry
too.
about the rest of it, right? And what would be great then is if like you had a bunch of those businesses in a food court. I think that's like what a lot of food trucks are like, right? That's kind of the experience of going. Sometimes if you go to a out in the summertime and there's like a food truck park somewhere, that can be a lot of fun. You can really like build an amazing meal that way.
So my second meal is north of the border in Winnipeg. My sister was planning to visit a friend of the family in Bismarck for a week. And so my mom said, JJ, you just got your learner's permit. Why don't you get some miles and we'll go and drop your sister off in Bismarck? So we drive to Bismarck. And while we're in Bismarck, my mom says, and this is during the summer, so I don't have school. She goes, hey, what do you think about going to the Peace Gardens? I'm like, hey, that sounds fun. Never been there. So we drive up to the Peace Gardens. And once we're in the Peace Garden, she goes, why don't we do this? Let's go to Winnipeg. What do you think? Drive across like Canada and we'll go to Winnipeg and then we'll go home from there. And so this is an era before computers and stuff like that. So we called my dad, and my dad had a guy who worked for him who was kind of the on the road sales agent. And
Mhm.
so he was in Winnipeg all the time. And so my aunt said, hey, could you recommend like a hotel and stuff? He's like, sure, sure, sure. He goes, in fact, I got a business card right here. So he recommended the International Hotel in Winnipeg. And so I got a chance to drive in Canada and learn the difference between miles and kilometers on my gauges. And we get to Winnipeg and we're at the International Hotel. The day we got there pretty late. So it's like 7, 8 o'clock. So we didn't.
And my guess is, yeah, like you guys don't have passports, right?
Right. At the time, you didn't need it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we just crossed, right? We just crossed. I didn't even know if I was legally allowed to drive in Canada since I only had a learner's permit in the United States. So, but I was driving everywhere. So we get to Canada, we get to the hotel, and my mom says, why don't we just order room service? And I was like,
Your mom knew how to party,
right?
dude.
And I'm like, that's a great idea. So we call down and we said, we'd like to order some things for room service. And they said, unfortunately, we've got a special event for the hotel that's taking place. And so we don't have our staff is all like at this event. But if you'd like to come down to the dining room, there, nobody else is here, and we'd make sure you get served in the dining room. So we're both like, oh, okay, whatever. And at this point, we've kind of thrown on some slouch clothes, and we're all schlubby at the time. So
Okay.
we go down, and the event that's going on is a retirement party for their chef, who's been the chef at this hotel for decades,
Oh.
right? And so we instantly feel uncomfortable because we're not dressed, but like they're incredibly welcoming. They're like, no, just come on in, don't worry, like here's the deal, like, we can't let you order off the menu right now because there's really no one working in the kitchen, but the chef has put together this tasting course for everybody here as his like farewell goodbye, and we'd invite you to take part in that with us if you want. And so we're like, oh, okay, I guess we'll try that. Why not? And what happened for the next almost 3 hours was this endless supply of like food. We were sitting at like a table for like 5 people with a couple of the other staff members who explained to us like, oh yeah, I've been serving here for like 10 years and I put myself through college, but I love it so much. And they have a higher kind of class of clientele who come through this hotel. And my mom's like, yeah, I'm definitely going to tell your dad that Jeff has been staying at too nice of hotels. Because like it's like this was not the type of hotel that you stay at if you're there to talk to some people who own convenience stores about carrying the sunflower seeds you're trying to sell.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but the one thing that stands out to me more than anything about this meal was there was a lobster bisque soup that was served at the very beginning of the meal that was unlike anything I'd ever tasted before. It was the right amount of savory. It had a slight sweetness to it that really pushed the taste of the lobster through. It was not thick, but it wasn't thin. It was, it wasn't just full of a bunch of chunks of stuff. Like it was a very well blended soup. I mean, I have tried to recreate this soup. And in fact, when I went back to Canada years later with my now wife, I said, we got to stay at the International Inn. And she's like, oh, okay. And while we were there, they had lobster bisque on the menu and I ordered it. And it clearly was not the same guy's lobster bisque. But like just the fact that we got to be a part of that meal was amazing because it wasn't meant for tourists, right? It was meant as this genuine thank you. And he poured his heart and soul into the things that he was giving to these people to enjoy who had like clearly helped him so much during his life. And I was like, it's kind of beautiful in that way. And we were just in the right place at the right time to eat a meal that was amazing.
How many
Amazing.
how many meals worth of food do you think you ate that night?
Here's the thing. Not a lot because they were all just done like tasting. So it's like
Oh,
when we like the soup wasn't a big bowl of soup. It was, probably like 3 Dixie cups worth of this soup, right?
okay.
In like a dish. And at one point they brought out like this bread that he had made, but everyone only got one piece of the bread and like his homemade butter. And beef Wellington was one of the things that they served, and everyone just got like a cut of the Wellington rather than the whole thing. So that's one of the nice things about it. Um, was the fact that like you just ate a lot of things, but very small amounts, right? So you couldn't gorge yourself
Right,
on
right,
one thing.
right.
And I would say like the other top meal of my life, I went to Switzerland with my sister. I can't even remember the year. It's been a long time though. But the idea was that we went to London, and then we went to Scotland where we visited a friend who was there and met up with a couple other friends. And then we flew to Switzerland and we stayed for a few days in Zurich with my grandfather's girlfriend, Barbie, at her house. And Barbie, Barbie and my grandfather were together for 25 years as a couple, maybe even more than that. And I always knew her as like she was Barbie, and she wasn't my grandma, but she was as close to a grandma as you could get for me.
Sure, sure, sure.
But like in Switzerland, she was Frau Domach, and she had previously been married, and her ex-husband was the heir to a knife fortune. Like his family was like one of the top knife makers like for the last
That's
300 years in Switzerland.
I don't know why I feel like you're explaining like a Roald Dahl novel or something.
And so at one point she told me like that's why she never got remarried, is if you get remarried you'd lose the alimony, and his alimony was just bonkers amounts of money, right? Like
Right,
this dude
right.
was, and she said, and his name was Uli, and Uli used to always hop over the fence is what she'd use as a euphemism for like cheating on their marriage. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
oh Uli, he was always hopping over the fence. So she, while we were there, she generously offered to take us to dinner, and we had to drive into the Swiss Alps, and there was this chalet that was tucked in the middle of a forest, and it was on a mountainside. It overlooked like the town of Zurich. It was like something out of a Bond film. And the chalet only seated probably like 20 people on 2 different levels, and it was very small. Like you could tell it used to be somebody's private home that they have turned into a restaurant, but it's been there for so long. It might have been built before America was even founded. And there were no menus. You just got what was like it was like a 5-course meal, and you got whatever the chef was working on that night. And it was so good. And everything is in Swiss, like the Swiss style of French, which is French, but then maybe a little bit of Italian. I know one of the things I ate, and I don't need letters about this, was veal. And oh my God, oh, it was so good. And we drank wine, and I took part in the conversations for what I could, understand, because her son and her daughter-in-law were musicians, and they spoke English, not perfectly, but they spoke a lot of English. And then, but then when Barbie is having a conversation with them, they, go straight into French. And my sister and I remember just being like, this meal is amazing. And I think that all said and done, at like the end of the night, there was like, okay, so there was 2, 3, there were 5 of us. I think the bill was something like $2,800 American.
Ooh,
And
wow.
Barbie was like, she pulled out a credit card, and she's like, your grandfather insists he's buying dinner tonight. And like, that's how close they were, right? She had like one of his credit cards. And I was
Sure.
like, thanks, Grandpa. It was heavenly. And my sister, like, if you ask my sister what's the best meal she's ever had, she'd be like, we went to this chalet in Switzerland, and not only was the view beautiful, and like the meal of course takes like 3 hours, right? And maybe that's one of the things I like the most is I've talked about 2 meals that have been just so long that you get to
Sure.
digest and you get conversation. At Smitty's Market, you stay there as long as you want until you're full and you can talk to strangers. I think part of a good meal to me involves a little bit of conversation. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, just even thinking about it now makes my mouth water. I also nailed my turkey on Thanksgiving this year. It was
You
perfect.
did what to your turkey?
I nailed it. I nailed it to the wall.
Yeah.
It was so good. I wanted to remember it forever. I feel like it's really good. And I want to put something out there for those people who like to cook. Okay. So I'd like to make a suggestion to you if you like to cook. And the suggestion is this. There is a great way to become an amazing chef and to never overdo the meat that you're cooking. It's called sous vide style. And so what sous
Right.
vide is you put this metal device into a container of water, and there's a fan in it that moves the water around so it makes like a current, and then it also has a heating element, and you set the temperature you're going to heat the water to. You take whatever you're cooking and you put it in a bag. So you can put it in like a vacuum sealer. You can do the old method where you force the air out of like a Ziploc bag. But whatever you do, you put it in a bag and you put it in this water. And you might be like, oh, gross, you're boiling it. No. So when you boil meat, you end up boiling a lot of the taste into the water. Okay.
Mhm.
This, all the juices stay within the steak, within the bag that you're putting in there. But what's perfect about it is when you cook sous vide, the entire piece of meat becomes that temperature. So it can never go above, let's say you want like a medium rare steak, and so you put it at 125 degrees. It never goes above 125 degrees,
Oh.
and it's 125 from like the outermost edge to all the way inside. So you get this perfectly done steak that is just to your liking. And so what you do is you pop it out of there and then you just reverse sear it really quick. So you get a really hot pan and you pop it on one side, pop it on the other, and then you get that nice, those kind of like cooked caramelized like colors on the outside. But
Right.
what's beautiful about the sous vide is you could, let's say you want to cook a turkey. You could cook an entire turkey with a sous vide method. All you have to do is you could use a bathtub if you really wanted. And I know a lot of people who use their sous vide and will put it into a cooler and they'll cook 30 ears of corn with it. And so the sous vide is all about just time. So
Okay.
if you know you want perfectly done steaks at 6 o'clock, all you have to do is start pull your steaks out of the fridge, start your sous vide when you get home from work, and it'll let you know when the water has reached that temperature, and then it'll start a timer. And so you just have to look up on an app or online. I use a brand called Anova, Anova. It could not be easier. It is incredibly intuitive when it comes to technology, and it's also very basic. So you can literally just use a little scroll wheel on it, set it to the temperature, and you're good to go. And you could set an egg timer for the time if you wanted, or you can Bluetooth it to your phone and you can get all those things going on. It is an amazing device, and I absolutely love it. It's so perfect for me because I like my steak to be medium rare. Jill likes hers to be medium. So what I do is when I pull them out or I pull Jill's out of the bath, and then I'll grill it for like 3 minutes on each side. And so it's at that internal temperature already, and I'll raise that internal temperature a little bit more so that it's done for her rather than like a full 30 minutes cooking the steak. And then I'll take mine out and just reverse sear it, and boom, we both have a steak done exactly to our liking. It's just so good. So good.
And is that how you do your turkey? Is that what you said?
I said you could do a turkey with it. I did my turkey. I just did it on the grill straight up.
Okay.
So I felt like I was like, it's a grill day for me, baby. That's what I want. And so
Okay, so I learned about something that I know most people will be like, how did you not know about this? But I didn't know about it because I never paid attention to football culture growing up as best I could. I would ignore it for the most part. And when I was with my family in Kentucky, football was on TV the whole time, right? Because my dad and my uncle are massive into it. And so I wasn't aware of the connection between John Madden and an annual like turducken.
Yeah.
I had no clue about that. I had heard about a turducken before, but I had always assumed that a turducken, I don't know why I thought this, but that it was just fake meat. It was like a faux meat. And so like a tofu or something. Versus no, it's a turkey that has a duck inside of it, that has a chicken inside of
Yeah.
it. Have you ever made a turducken?
Yes, once. And so a turducken, the thing about a turducken is it's incredibly labor intensive because you have to debone the entire duck and then you debone the chicken, which means you are carving up an uncooked chicken and taking all the bones out of it. And the same thing with the duck, so that you can shove that in the carcass of the turkey. So what it does is a duck is a very greasy, fatty, not fatty, but very greasy, all dark meat type of a fowl. And so what that does is it leaches out that kind of greasy, ducky, that duck grease into the chicken, which then bleeds its grease into the turkey. And so it's like having this like giant stick of butter that's inside of your bird while it's cooking. So it's actually basting it from the inside out. And I mean, it's nothing short of amazing, and it's a flavor and a profile taste. Like your breast meat ends up so incredibly moist and so good. And you get. So have you ever seen, like, did you see a turducken? Have you ever Googled a turducken?
Yeah, I have.
You know how they have multiple legs on the side of it? Where they
Yeah.
essentially they decorate it with the legs from the other birds.
It's so it turns my stomach, actually. I don't like it at
And they
all.
put those little tiny like booties on them as well to
Yeah,
deck them out.
not cool. Not cool.
So yeah, to me there's something a little magical. I think that let me say something for you. You would find no pleasure in making a turducken. I think you would find pleasure in eating a turducken, but it's not something you want on like once in your life and you're good to go.
But here's the thing is turkey and duck and chicken, those are such different flavor profiles that I only want one or the other at a certain time. Like having them all at the same time feels like it's why it doesn't, I don't actually see it as actually enhancing a flavor profile somehow, but also I just want turkey with stuffing in it.
Sure.
Right. Like that's which is what Unchained did. And it was amazing.
I never put stuffing inside my turkey.
Why?
I just never have. Partially because in the Gordon family, we have what we call raw stuffing, which means that like I don't buy like stale breadcrumbs. I use like fresh bread when I make my stuffing. And then I pour like my butter sage mixture over that, and I let it sit overnight to kind of let the flavors really soak in. And then I don't cook most of my stuffing. I serve it like it is, like so room temperature. And so we call it raw. And we must be doing something right, because I had guests who literally like called me up and said, like, hey, listen, are you making that raw stuffing? Could I stop by and just get some of that from you? So I always end up making just an enormous amount because I know people are going to want it. And if they're just being polite, stop making me do that, people, if you don't really want it. But if you do want it, like, and I do think genuinely that people enjoy it. So
I want to try that really badly.
it's good. You know what? Here's the thing. I ended up giving away so much of it that I only had enough for like one Thanksgiving set of waffles the next day. So I'll have to I'll have to make some more, and I'll bring you some because you deserve it, Tucker.
Well, thank you very, very much. I'm drooling now, and I had a really unsatisfying lunch before we recorded.
What did you have?
I ordered Mr. Beast Burger.
What is Mr. Beast Burger?
Exactly. So I did it through Uber Eats, just because I'm back from a long vacation, but the vacation was like, it was stressful travel without like any privacy.
Uh-huh.
And so I'm just trying to veg out today if I can. And I was looking through the burgers. I just wanted a burger, and I saw Mr. Beast burgers. And Mr. Beast is this YouTube personality guy who does all these weird feats, like reading the entire dictionary on over 48 hours or something on camera, and then from there took it up to like other crazy stuff. And he started investing in a chain of burger joints. And so I was like, well, let's try their burgers and see if they're any good, because the marketing seems interesting. But it was just a stale smash burger coated in mustard. You would have hated it. Yeah.
Sorry, I had to let my dog out of the room real quick.
Oh, that's okay. I heard you go, ah! And I thought, well, that must be a response to the mustard.
I mean, it was. I was audibly disgusted by what you were explaining.
Oh,
okay. Why are smash burgers so big right now?
I mean, I like the texture of a smash burger. I like it's kind of nice to have kind of a crispy fried burger. So I had one in Arkansas that was really good. It was like a smash steak burger or whatever. It's really, really good. But it's not always the format I'm looking for. But the absolute best burger I have ever had, and I miss it so much, but it's in Pittsburgh, and it's called Burgatory. I know they at least have some in Pittsburgh. They may have them in other places, but Burgatory is my absolute favorite place. So you can custom make your burger, and they have a ton of high-end options. So even though they've got like a really big menu you could pick from, it is all really fresh and really, really well made. And so the burger I would make was a burger patty medium that was half beef, half ground bacon.
Yeah.
And then that would be on a pretzel bun, and it would have like a pepper jack and a sharp cheddar cheese on top of it. And then it came with crispy onions, and then some romaine lettuce, and this amazing kind of like a garlic aioli on top of it. Oh my God. It was so good. And so every time I'd be in Pittsburgh for poker night, we would always make a point of going to Burgatory like 2 or 3 times if we could, because everyone had like their absolute favorite burger that they had created there, and it was always delicious.
Interesting. Well, now I've got a place I want to go, Burgatory. Like, I feel the need.
Yeah, we got to go to Pittsburgh.
I love it. So 2023 we'll hit Pittsburgh up.
We'll hit Pittsburgh, and then we'll hit Philly.
Oh, I love that idea. The Pennsylvania trifecta, because we'll also hit the turnpike while we're there.
There you go.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that does it for this episode of JJ Meets World. I'm glad that we made you hungry. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. The worst meal I've ever eaten was inside of the Burger King on South University Drive. There just wasn't any love